Dating was a lot different before social media and the rise of dating apps. All kinds of bar scenes, nightclubs, campus life, malls, and basically every place else that's outside was available. Women had to go outside to get male attention, and they could only get male attention from the men that they came across outside, in real life. The mating game was a much more level playing field, as opposed to the world we live in now, where women are elevated well above men to the level of demigoddesses, having absolute selection over high-caliber men from all over the world, but only for a couple of nights tops. Let's walk it back to the beginning. It started with the competition of nightlife. It's been established that women had to go outside to meet men. Well, the same went for men meeting women. This gave lower status men a much greater chance of success, but obviously looks, status, height, and money gave men an advantage. But one thing is missing from that list: game. Game was a way of life. Though it was really psychotherapist Albert Ellis kicking off the pickup world in 1967 with his book The Art of Seduction, and then Eric Weber later bringing it to a new level in 1970 with his book How to Pick Up Girls. The term PUA wouldn't become a staple until around 2005 with Neil Strauss's legendary work The Game, penetrating the secret society of pickup artists. This book would make mainstream both the terms PUA, or pickup artist, and also game. So what exactly is game? I would define game as all the things you do to attract women outside of the well-known male advantages: hair, face, height, status, money, and clothing. It's everything from how you speak, how you move, your body language, to how you strategize your interactions with women, and much more. What was a man struggling with women in the early 2000s to do? Learn game, that's what. There was nothing else, because nothing else was needed. The nightlife was arguably at its peak. Not sure how many would argue that, but it wasn't quite in decline yet anyway. And there was still no excuse. Anyone could buy nice clothes, get gel in their hair, or shave it, and learn how to talk to a woman. There was not only tons for men to learn, but there was quite a bit of money to be made for the PUA guru. Workshops, books, ebooks, DVDs, CDs, online video courses, and video call mentoring over the internet. VH1's The Pickup Artist kicked off in 2007, taking the developing PUA movement out of the shadows and into the limelight in a big way. Its second season aired in 2008. Both seasons led, of course, by none other than pickup guru sensation Mystery, also known as Eric von Markovic, who was previously known for his profiling in Neil Strauss's The Game. Audiences watched in awe as nerdy average guys got haircuts, new wardrobes, and learned from the pros how to woo women as they were weeded off the show one by one until there was a winner each season. The pickup artist business came out guns blazing in the early 2000s and would start to see its peak in and through the 2010s. The PUA business would continue on YouTube through the 2010s, continuing to generate lots of money for business-savvy guys who could at least make it seem like they knew how to pick up women. I had some decent success following the advice of the slightly lesser-known Brent Smith of Brent Smith Lifestyle. Worth looking into if you aren't familiar. As the 2010s progressed, something would start to change. The PUA sphere would continue to thrive, but its numbers would start to dwindle as men filtered off into other movements that were developing at the time. Enter men's rights activism. Okay, so it was already a thing. The term men's rights was used at least as early as February 1856 when it appeared in Putnam's magazine. The author was responding to the issue of women's rights, calling it a new movement for social reform and even for political revolution, which the author proposed to counter with men's rights. The modern men's rights movement emerged from the men's liberation movement, which appeared in the first half of the 1970s when scholars began to study feminist ideas and politics. In the mid-1970s, Warren Farrell wrote his book The Myth of Male Power, which could be considered the origin of what is known today as the men's rights movement. One of the first major men's rights organizations was the Coalition of American Divorce Reform, founded by Richard Doyle in 1971, from which the Men's Rights Association spun off in 1973. Clearly, MRA was something that was brewing behind the scenes quite some time alongside and even before the PUA movement took center stage. But as a kind of bitterness and resentment toward women started to rise as more and more young men continued to fail in the 2010s with pickup artist techniques, this youthful male bitterness would sort of fuse with the pre-existing men's rights movement. Paul Elam founded A Voice for Men online in 2009, which would host radio shows, has a forum, and posts articles on their website. The men's rights activists would focus on topics such as men losing money unfairly in divorce, never getting to see their children due to the corruption of the court system in custody battles, and countering the unjust anti-male rhetoric and sentiment of the growing hostile feminist second and then third wave feminist movements. For young adult millennials in the early 2010s, though, it was commonplace to brush quickly over the men's rights movement and run into the notoriously known to this day MGTOW movement. Though MGTOW has roots as early as 2001 with the No Ma'am blog, which was primarily full of libertarians and had a manifesto, the MGTOW that we know today arguably traces back to a man who calls himself Sandman.
Hi everyone, Sandman here. This video is brought to you by a donation from Mr. Anonymous, and here's what he has to say. I'm 6'6" tall and very skinny. I have no friends and get no women. I'm not a virgin and have had sex with like 5 girls, 3 being escorts that I paid for.
The MGTOW movement spread and grew rapidly around 2013. Many channels that maybe didn't last over the years disappeared and are largely forgotten existed. The early YouTube movement, I would say, was very chaotic, raw, some could say primal, for some scary, and for others exciting.
Tons of medications, and most of them are considered supplements. And basically, I'm just soldiering on.
It started with older men who had suffered from divorce, airing out their grievances with alimony, custody battles, and the overall mental anguish, trauma, and stress of dealing with a divorce after a failing relationship. This sea of resentment, as I said earlier with MRA, would start to merge with an oncoming sea of resentment from younger 20s men who were ultimately having very little success in dating and hookup culture during the 2010s. That would in turn, due to the sheer popularity of YouTube with the youth culture of that time, meet with male resentment toward women from high school-aged boys. It became very apparent in the mid-2010s that men were becoming increasingly unhappy with women. The middle-aged and mid-30s men would pave the way via their divorce experiences for the younger 20s men to write off women entirely before even having any serious relationships at all. MGTOW would spend just a couple of years underground, only known by men until quickly clashing with the surface, causing much controversy. YouTube would start to crack down on MGTOW channels around 2019. At that time, many popular MGTOW channels just flat out disappeared. The original wave of MGTOW men, that being older men who had been hurt via relationships with women, would ultimately either truly go their own way, eventually away from YouTube as well, or they would continue to make content. The larger majority of MGTOW, however, being the younger, less experienced group, would start to become more self-aware and begin to identify as something else entirely. Enter the Blackpill. Though it felt good to have camaraderie with older men between the years 2014 to about 2018 or so, it was becoming rapidly more evident that these unexperienced men were an entirely different breed. These men would ultimately be seen as the weakest of the MGTOW movement, as detractors would make comments like, "You are not going your own way, you are being sent his own way," or "You are a man sent his own way," Women never wanted you. And many of the young men who formerly identified as MGTOW knew and accepted this to be the truth. And so we come to the end of our journey. Why? Because it was at this moment they realized that it was over.
Here we are again. Listen, you kids, you're living in La La Land, alright? You're thinking, next thing I do, it's gonna be the last thing I gotta do. This is just the last little step I gotta do. Then I'm gonna be getting the ladies, then I'm doing this. If I go, listen, buddy. Afraid it's not quite that easy.
What is up, you guys? So today I'm bringing you guys a video on how I discovered the black pill. You know, I always knew that some about me just didn't get girls like that, you know, because I would look at these guys around me, you know, and they would just get girls like it's nothing, you know, and I would always try. There was just something about me that just never, you know, was able to successfully acquire a woman.
Old ways of doing them simply do not work now, especially like dating advice in general about anything. How can these old people who are like in their 60s, 70s, 80s, you know, plus have any clue about what's going on now as a kid? You know, they're not growing up now.
I'm aware of this. My life is boring and trash. Every day is pain for me. Every day. A long time ago, I don't go outside anymore, only to buy foods.
What's going on, YouTube? Brandon back at you guys with another video presentation. In this video here, I'm going to be talking about confidence some more. I'm going to be talking about how confidence is a myth. That's what I'm going to talk about.
Just as MGTOW was less organized and more chaotic than MRA, the black pill was almost complete, unmolded, melancholy venting. Men talking into computer microphones unscripted about their failings with women. Though it would start out aimless and without form, the endless flows of consciousness of black pill men would begin to amount to a pool of data, which would eventually pave the way for a new science. A realization that attraction was less about the paradigm of PUA, that ultimately it could be seen that PUA was possibly a lie. A realization that one's height, hairline, facial structure, and jaw were everything to women. Each of these movements would continue to exist. PUA channels are still out there doing their thing to this day, and it seems like a man can go back to them at any time if they ever want to optimistically approach the dating scene again. MRA activists are still speaking up for men's rights, as feminism approaches its fourth wave and becomes more aggressive than ever. MGTOW is still a thing, though it's been labeled an extremist group, and the young demographic of men that used to fill the ranks of MGTOW is more likely today to identify as a blackpiller, hopefully not an incel, which has also been labeled as an extremist group, or maybe even just a sexual failure or the classic beta, or even loser. What it all seems to amount to is that the dating scene as we used to know it is rapidly crumbling, to the point of statistics made public by The Hill being pushed into the faces of the masses just now. 63% of men ages 19 to 29 are single, and only 32% of women ages 19 to 29 are single. Divorce rates have fallen slightly. They held strong around 50% since the 2000s, but are only falling now as marriage itself is in decline. Many have made the observation that the Mouse Utopia experiment of 1968 by American ethologist John B. Calhoun just might be coming to fruition in Western human civilization. Many men say that feminism is to blame, while others point the finger beyond to the establishment powers that played a great role in the creation of feminism and other Malthusian elements. You could blame social media, dating apps, and technology in general, as many thought that the state of dating and relationships was fine from the 1950s up until about 2012. Many women would either say that this is all a conspiracy, claim that the statistics are either exaggerated or a flat-out lie, or they would claim that this is just the result of women for the first time in history no longer being oppressed. I will leave it up to you to decide. All I claim to know is that people aren't going to be able to hide from the harsh truth much longer. The male-female relationship is in danger, and it spells out a dark future for Western society. If you liked this video, please like, subscribe, and comment.